What makes a variable? Why variables are important, and what makes a variable, and how do we make a variable? Okay, so here's an example I'm going to give up here. So we've got local dog equals John. Now what this actually means is we go and break it down. So first of all, we are going to define that our variable is a local, so that our variable is only recognized within this script. So for example, if I just typed in dog equals John, somebody with an external script, for example, somebody like a hacker, for example, could then say, they could then grab that code and then they could then say dog is equal to give 1,000 points. So we define it as local because that means that it will only run within this script specifically. So we'll go ahead and do that. So the next thing we're going to do is then we're going to come up with a name for the variable. My best advice for you is to keep it simple. Keep it simple, and if you're going to use multiple words, what you need to do is we don't need to do it, but it's very nice, and you see it a lot in code, is that you do not have capitals on your first word, but every word after your first word you capitalize. So the next thing we are going to do is actually have our input. And our input could be a string, it could be a number. Now a string is just another word for text. You know, it can be anything. It could have a string of numbers. So it could be like John 5594 or John or player 123. But then if you wanted an actual number, you would need a number, which is an integer, which is a whole number. You can have a number, which is a decimal point number, and that's a number value. But for this purpose of this video, it's just going to reference a integer. So that is how you make a variable. What are properties? Where to find properties in Roblox Studio? What types of properties exist? As an example will be shown in a few seconds. How editing the properties can be useful through a script. So what are properties? So let's go ahead and reveal the next one. So here is where you can find your properties windows in Roblox. Now it should be on the right hand side by default. If it's not, all you need to do is you need to head up to the view option, which is right here. And then you just need to press on the properties tab, which will be around there. It's quite easy. There's quite some easy tutorials online if you want to find the properties tab. So we're moving on to how editing properties, like what are properties. So let's go ahead and give us an example here. So here's some example of some properties that can be edited through the use of scripts. Now why is this useful? Well, you might be able to want a player to just say walk through a door, and you want the door not to be there. You could do this through a script. And that's the whole purpose of scripting, really. It's to enable you to do something that the game can't do by default. So I hope. So that's what properties are. What are functions? What is the purpose of a function? An example of a function which will be shown. So this is a function. So we've got local get color of part equals function in brackets part. I'm going to return print part.color, okay, and then an end. So why we use a function? So let's break it down. So define our function with a variable. So this is what we've done. We defined it as a variable. So as you can see, it says get color of part, okay, and this is our function. This is our function. This is what we want our code to do. We are going to need a variable in there, which is going to be referenced as part for now, and we're going to return print part.color. So we are going to pass a variable which is waiting for you to send an instance. So we are going to send an instance, and an instance is like an object. So you could have like a part or a car, for example. It could be anything you want an instance could be. And we're going to tell our code to return that instance color. Okay, so we'll go ahead, and this is how you would call your function. So there's our function up there, and this is how you would call it. So we could say get color of part, and then we could just pass our parts location into the brackets here, and then it would return our colour of our part. What are services? How to define a service as a variable. How services tie into events. How are services useful? So how do we define a service? This is how we define it. So we have our local variable and we say game get service because we want to get a service. We're going to say for this instance we're going to get the player's service. There are plenty of services out there that you can use. They all have different functions and all have different possibilities that you can do. Here's an example of some of them. I will leave a link in the description so you can go ahead and look at the index. All of these are services that you can require via using the same method right here, up in the says well, shown on screen. Okay, so what are events? That is the main purpose because it ties into services. Why we use events? Why events are important? Okay, so services are essentially a built-in API request to Roblox. What I mean by that is they tell the program that you're using, they say, hey, I would like to get some information from Roblox. Can you help me with the players? Can you find the players service for me? That's basically what it's saying. Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue on from that. So why we use events? So events allow us to basically trigger stuff that, like, let's say a player joins the game for an example. We might want them to get given health. We might want them to take damage or so forth. That's why we use events. Now, parts can have events. Anything that is an instance can have an event. Some models also have events. Anything that is an actual physical object can have an event. Although you can create your own events, but that's for another tutorial. So we'll go ahead and move on. So here's an example of what an event looks like. So we've got our local player service. So we've got our variable here, we're getting players. And then we've got a function here, which is on player added. And then the player who joined is our variable that we're passing through. And we're going to print the name of the person who joined. And then we've got our actual event, which is down the bottom on the left here. And we're saying players service dot player added, and that's our event. Our event is player added, all in blue. There you go. And then we're going to go ahead and do connect on player added, because this is our player that we're going to pass through to our function. Okay, that's what we are passing through, and then it's going to go ahead and print our player's name in. So yeah, so that's what services and events are. Why you should use comments in your code. This is an example of a one-line comment. There are only two, as far as I am aware of, there's only two types of comments that you can create. And this is how you create it. You create it by the two little dots, two hyphens, and then that will be a one-line comment. There is another type of comment, which is a two-line comment, which is two hyphens followed by two curly brackets. And as you can see, it says I can type on multiple lines from 34 to 35, so forth. Whatever. Which brings me on to this closing point of the video. Always try and keep this in mind with your comments. Clean code always looks like it was written by someone who cares. And this is from a guy named Michael Feathers. Now, if you don't know much about him, I really suggest that you look him up. He is very, very good in terms of what he did. In terms of my closing remarks, in terms of what I'm going to portray to you at the end of this, is this guy. This guy's name is Uncle Bob, and he has some really, really, really fascinating, interesting points on how you should have clean code. So I'm going to go ahead and provide this presentation in the description. You can go ahead and download this presentation and you can click to watch the video. I'm also going to provide a link to the video itself, and I really recommend that you watch those video because it has some very interesting points that really do open your eyes to the world that we live in today. So that's really going to end the video here. So thank you for watching. If you did like and you do want to see more advanced stuff and advanced tutorials like this in the future, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.